So let's see how it's going to cope with that. Well, it's better. It's better. It's certainly better. It still needs a bit of work though. Now this area here is definitely something I can fix in Photoshop, so I'm not going to worry about dealing with it now. It's just really the really tricky areas of hair we want to worry about. So over here is a bit of hair that's picking up some of the background still. So looking at the workspace, I think all I really need to do is just blend that edge a bit better, and I bet that will fix that right up. Yeah, that's starting to make a difference. So I'm going to fix the rest of that area in Photoshop. I'm quite happy with that. Now I'm just going to remind myself what the rest looks like. This is all good. Up here we've got a bit of a problem. So there's also a bit of an issue over here. I think it needs more of a blend because, as you can see by sliding this up and down, there is a bit of hair that goes outside the blend area. So we're just going to go over that like that and see if that improves. It's much better. The same problem will be here. These problems always appear because there's a bit of green there. Something is encroaching on an area that should either be blended or deleted. So I'm just going to touch that with the blend tool, and I'm hoping that that area will now disappear. And it does. So you can see it's pretty straightforward to use broad strokes to get a good result. Now remember, this hair is out of focus, so it looks very rough and ready and blurry, but that's how the original photo is, as you can see in the source file. So it's actually making a pretty good job of blending it, and when you see it on the new background, you'll see that that works. That's going to work really well. So let's just have a quick look up here to see how this is getting on. So it's a bit rough. So I'm going to try and improve this area by getting a little bit closer in on the areas I want to keep. But you've got to be really careful not to run into an area that should be blended as well. See how we're doing with that. Yeah, that's starting to improve. And it's really picking out these hairs very finely here. Okay, so this is obviously an area that's going to be a little trickier. So I can again easily fix this up in Photoshop. It's these areas of blending and the very fine hairs that are coming out okay. So I'm confident that this will work out. And again, remember that the photograph is blurred here slightly, so it looks very blurry, but actually when it goes onto the new background it should fit in just right. So I'm happy about that for now. I could carry on working on this well for as long as I want, really, until it's totally perfect, but for the purposes of the tutorial I think that's shown how to achieve good results. So what I'm going to do now is take this back to Photoshop and place it on a new background. So once you're happy, if you want to save your progress and come back to it later, you can do that. You can file save and save it as new project, so you don't lose anything when you go back to Photoshop. Once that's saved, you go up to File, Save and Apply. And that will take the image, create a mask, bring it into Photoshop, and it's laid it right over the top. And as you can see, as I said earlier, it has got rid of the background altogether, but we've kept the original layer. So what we're going to do is duplicate the original layer, hide the background, Command click the new masked layer, hide that one, and click the add layer mask button down here, and now we can work non-destructively. We have a masked layer. I can disable this so that you can see that we have all the background still in there, and we can now start touching up the mask and fix all those little problem areas that we saw earlier. To make life simpler, I'm going to create a new layer and fill it with say 50% grey. Actually, I think I'll go a bit darker than that. I might select that nice garish blue, or maybe a slightly less garish blue, and fill the background with that, and that helps us to see what needs work, what doesn't. So really quickly, I'm not going to spend too much time doing this, but this is where you can just touch up these areas in Photoshop, and where necessary you can use the burn tool to darken the areas of light over here. And there will be areas that have completely disappeared. I must say it's looking pretty good, but areas like this, remember this problem area, all we've got to do, because we're working non-destructively, is just fill this area back in with a feathered brush in Photoshop, and that'll work fine. And if you want a preview of what the original background looked like, you can just turn on the background like that, and you can see that we need to fill it in a little more up here. And so on. So just out of interest, I'm just going to look at how it dealt with the eyelash and then fix it. I'm just adding a bit of the face back in there on the layer mask. So I'm pretty happy with the result. It certainly could do with a little more tweaking, but overall I think in the time that it's taken to do, I think it's a pretty good result. So now you can put in pretty much any background you want. So I've got a couple of backgrounds here that I got from a free image library. So I'm just going to copy and paste those behind. So there's the dark one, here's a slightly lighter one. Just going to enlarge that one as well. Now, as you'll see, without any doctoring, it works a little better over the lighter background than it does over the darker background. But we can make it work perfectly well on both. If we look at the dark one first, what we can do now to blend this a little better is duplicate the layer, hide the top layer, select the lower layer, and using the blending pop-up here, go to multiply, and instantly, obviously, all this area has disappeared, but you'll see that the hair actually blends in much better with that dark background when you go and multiply. But now we need to fill in the areas that we want to keep. So turn on the upper layer, and you can select all and delete just on the mask, don't delete the actual image, and then we can start to paint in the areas of light that we want to retain. And if we command click the mask of the layer beneath it, then we can paint very roughly on these solid areas and not go outside the limits of the mask. So I'm just going to do this very roughly and fill in this area here. And we'll make it reasonably realistic. So that's obviously too harsh a difference between the dark and light. So we're going to use a much larger feathered brush just to soften that off. And now you'll see that actually blends much better, this area here with the background. Although it's not entirely realistic, obviously, because she's very brightly lit, and this background isn't necessarily the best one to do it against, but it's a good way of demonstrating how you can blend in hair onto a dark background. Now for the light background, to be honest, you can use probably exactly the same image you've just doctored would work equally well, and it does. But if you wanted to lighten it up a bit, you can just paint in a little more of that mask, and there's a bit more light that suits the background. And that is how you can cut out hair using fluid mask and a bit of tweaking in Photoshop. So thanks very much for watching, and I hope you'll watch some more from graphicdesignemployment.com. Thanks, bye.